I'm curious if there were stereotypes that you felt like you might have had to break through by being in service, or whether maybe society was different at that time and it was there weren't any expectations or stereotypes of women in the service.
I think that the men in the Army were glad to see us because we were doing clerical work, and that increased their chances of going overseas. And believe it or not, most of them wanted to go overseas. They wanted to fight.
When I went in, I don't think there was any stereotypes. I think being in the medical side, it may have been a little bit different. There was definitely more females, more nurses, and we just really did not have the stereotype that I think maybe existed even 10 years ago.
We have it big time. It's a big problem nowadays, especially with our generation. And now that we're not just doing clerical work, we're doing almost every other job that a man can do in the military. You're constantly trying to prove yourself to, like, I worked with all men. I had to prove to them, and it was like hazing almost, but it's not outright and said. But I had to prove to them that I was one of them and that I could do the same job that they could. And they respected me more for it, and they were like my brothers instead of my enemy at that point.
In talking to you, Wanda, you had talked about the first time you deployed, and I was curious if you would share that a little bit, that flight and what that was like.
The first time that I was deployed was in Panama Just Cause, and totally unexpected, and I really believe that we were not quite as prepared because the unit that I was in, nobody had really experienced anything. They hadn't been deployed before. But coming back, we flew from Panama and took the casualties into San Antonio, and most of them were orthopedic injuries, but it was still very solemn. A lot of these more serious injuries had already flown out, but we still had some very young people on the plane. They had never been in any sort of action before, and they were scared. Now, some of their injuries were minor, but they were still really scared. But you just really kind of learn it. The training that you have kind of kicks in, and as soon as I saw that we had people that were injured, it's like you begin remembering, okay, this is what I need to do, this is what I've been trained for.
In talking to you, Amber, you had an interesting story about the first kind of Iraqi child that you had worked on while you were deployed, and the reaction that some of the guys had. I was curious if you'd share that story with them.
It was towards the latter part of the deployment, and we get two patients that came in. One was a 6-year-old, and the other one was his mom. Well, she wouldn't stop at a checkpoint, and so they fired upon her vehicle several times. One of the children was killed, and then the other little boy came into our aid station, and she was fine. She was just obviously freaked out because of her kids. So she was just having a panic attack. The guys see the boy come in, and they freak out, and they run over to the mother to start taking care of her when there's nothing that wrong with her. This boy's laying there. He'd been hit in the side, barely missed the chest wall, and it slid right up and come up and blew out his shoulder, a 50 cal. And so he ended up losing his arm. But these guys are standing over there freaking out. Our PAs are both out of the aid station. So I'm standing here with this kid, and I've got to fix him. And afterwards, those guys just, I think they were just beside themselves. They didn't know how to, I had dealt with kids before. I was an EMT before I joined, so but they were scared. I thought they were going to pee their pants.
Chris, when we spoke, you talked about your first station assignment was overseas.
My first, I'm just a playgirl compared to these two people.
Oh, no.
I didn't do anything except have a good time, basically. I'm not saying that I goofed off. I never, got in trouble or anything, but I did my job and had a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And I never did anything like either one of them have experienced.
Do you consider what you did, though, as foundational for allowing Amber and Wanda to do what they do?
I know, I don't look like that. I think that there were so many of us who went in and then got out as soon as the war was over. But it was those girls who stayed in that broke the ground for you all.
With all respect, I disagree
Yeah.
with you.
Really?
You definitely laid the foundation for,
Anyone that,
for any other female that has come in, whether you stayed in or you went out, you laid the foundation for us.
Well, I sure didn't think of it that way.
Yeah.